Scientology. There's a place in Florida where you've got friends. We'll help you present if you give us those ends. Party at the church of Scientology. Don't call it a cult, you just don't understand. Write us a check and take our hand. Party at the church of Scientology. There's a place in Florida where you've got friends. We'll help you present if you give us those ends. Party at the church.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Scientology stream. Looks like I got Tony Ortega with me here. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound great. How you doing, man?
Okay,
thanks
great.
for staying up late with us tonight.
You bet. I'm way past my bedtime, man.
Well, we won't keep you too long here. We'll tell some stories, have some laughs at some of the Scientology videos, maybe watch a little of their live feed, and let you get to bed because I know you're on the East Coast. So
sure.
So Ashley had a bit of a technical issue. So, but before we get started with all this, maybe some of my viewers aren't familiar with your work. Can you tell us like the 30,000 foot view of what you're about and what you do?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm the only journalist foolish enough to write about Scientology every day, which I do at the Underground Bunker, and I've been doing daily Scientology news since about 2011, first at the Village Voice and then on my own website, tonyortega.org. And I've actually been writing about Scientology. This September, it will be 25 years, believe it or not.
Yeah,
and
you've been a pretty good resource for me. We didn't start doing like content about Scientology until like maybe a year ago, but there's as you know, many of us have a personal connection to it. We've lost friends and family to the cult, so you've been a pretty much a steady resource for me when I'm looking for information on the cult, and I just wanted to thank you for that.
Sure. Well, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it, and I've got a couple books out on it now, and I was in Alex Gibney's HBO documentary Going Clear. I was on Leah Remini's show a couple of different times. And, I just stay involved. I ask a lot of questions and write a lot of different stories. And boy, it's just been crazy these last 3 or 4 weeks. I'm just, I'm so behind. If let me just say, if anybody out there has sent me an email recently and you haven't heard back from me, it's just because I'm buried right now. There's so much going on.
Yeah, you would. What's coming up next? Because you write every day. What's tomorrow's article?
Tomorrow, we've been taking a look at the ways Scientology's been reacting to the whole COVID thing, and in very strange ways. And in particular, there's this new anti-vax warrior they've got in California by the name of Lee Dundas, and she's done it again. She's just got this. We've got a video of her berating public officials about masks and stuff. And I don't know that these politicians in Orange County have any idea that she's a Scientologist working for a Scientology front. So I'm going to keep publicizing that to try to give these politicians a clue. But it's wild, and I hope people come by tomorrow and take a look at it.
Yeah, we'll be sure to repost it on our feeds and stuff. It was a bit of a deliverance when you started covering the cult's involvement with the anti-Scientology movement for us, because that kind of crossed the streams for us in a lot of ways. We cover medical misinformation and conspiracy theory here in addition to cults. So that was like two things that we care a lot about coming together into one thing. And I'd spoken to Chris Shelton maybe fucking 3 years ago almost, and he had mentioned that one of the reasons he left was that the cult was, to some greater or lesser extent, even though maybe not advertising, they don't talk about it as much, they are anti-vaccine.
Well, the church really didn't have any official policy on vaccines, and some old Sea Org people will tell you that they got their vaccines when they were on the Apollo, but others will tell you that that was actually kind of a joke and that they weren't. But there's just no question that Hubbard in his lectures was just really critical of medicine in general and doctors, and because he wanted to replace them. He wanted to replace them with his mental technology and you would only go to see a physician for the most obvious sort of like broken arm, right? Anything else in the way of asthma or diabetes or even cancer were just problems with your head that he believed he could fix. So because of that, Scientologists in general are very down on Western medicine and often look for the most quack alternative theories, alternative treatments. And so it should be to nobody's surprise that a lot of Scientologists are anti-vax, and a lot of them, you know what, Scientologists are just very susceptible to conspiracies because they've bought into one of the biggest of all time. So they're very much sort of Alex Jones, Wacko Bird, very far right of center folks for the most part, which I know surprises some people. They think, hey, wait a minute, isn't this a hippie group that came out of California and Florida? You know, and you have to explain to them, no, this is a business obsession. This group, it's like, you know, their fetish is with business rules, you know, not with like free love. You know, it's a very strange organization as far as its obsessions.
So welcome back, Media Wench.
Hey, I did an update. Usually updates are like big fat no before any show. That's what you've taught me. So I'm just like, nope, I'll just wait until after. But it turns out this was like I had to to get it to work. But yes. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I heard what you guys were talking about beforehand. So I have been doing a little bit of like watching some of your old videos and things like that, and I came across that you were on the first episode of Penn and Teller's bullshit about debunking TV psychics like John Edwards, and I laughed my ass off because I was like, you are like so my power animal, because I have been back in the old days when we were just like audio only podcasts. One of my favorite things was to call up psychic lines, and the only question I ever asked them is, who am I and why am I calling? Because unless you know the answer to those questions, you ain't got nothing. And yeah, so I was.
You can actually find that episode on YouTube, and you can see a very much younger version of me sitting at a laptop typing away. Yep.
That
was fun. That was a lot of fun.
That was great. Yeah, I watched that little episode earlier today just to check it out, because 2003, God, that was eon ago. But also everybody that is involved with Scientology on the ex-Scientologist side, or even on the still pro Scientologist side, have interviewed you, and I didn't want to do the same old interview with you. And I definitely want people to know who you are and where you're and where they can find you at. But also, I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about the ex-Scientologist community. There's one gentleman that we just spoke with a little while ago. His name is Doug Kramer. He's very new to YouTube, and we had producer Dave had the honor of speaking to him for about an hour and a half, and it was a great talk. And I feel like there's like three veins of ex-Scientologists, right? There's like the ex-Scientologist that still practices Scientology outside of the church, the free zoners. And they're just like, they're the ones that just think that David Miscavige is the one that's ruining the whole thing, and the tech is still great, and you can still get on the bridge and do your thing without spending hordes and hordes and hordes of money. Then there's like the former Scientologists that are like Leah, who are still kind of fighting that feeling that they are that they're still like knee-jerk reacting to things like how they were programmed in the church, and not that it's something that they just want to do. Like a very good example of that is when she says that she has downtime, she feels guilty about having downtime, that she could just sit and relax because she should be out doing something to make the world a better place. And it's whether she wants to actually just do that, or whether that's something that has just been beat into her because of Scientology. And then there's the guys like Doug who leave the church and are fucking pissed. And those are the ones that we love to talk to, because they have the most shade to throw, and they have the best stuff to talk about. Who is probably the most angry ex-Scientologists that you've spoken to?
Well, let me just point out that some people go through all three. I mean, this
True.
is something you find with people is that, you know, one thing I learned very early on is how long it takes to throw off that mental whammy that Scientology puts on you. I mean, people from Torrey Christman to Jefferson Hawkins, they've all told me that it can take 10 to 12 years to recover from that indoctrination. And so I try to cut people slack. I mean, there are people who come to me with fantastic information about the Church of Scientology that I want to write about. And they let me know, hey, you know, I still like Hubbard. I still do auditing. And I said, that's fine with me. I mean, I understand that people come out of the church on different trajectories. And that person that I just spoke to, who is still auditing, who still says that L. Ron Hubbard really invented a fantastic thing, I may come back to them 6 months later and we'll talk again. I said, by the way, you still auditing? Oh, no, you know, I'm not really doing that anymore. I still think Hubbard was onto something, but I'm just not. I've moved on. And then I might go back to them a couple years later, and they're like you said, they're pissed. They said, this is all junk. We were completely fooled. I have talked to people who have been in all three phases. And then there are people that come right out. Chris Shelton's a good example. I mean, the guy was ready to make videos like months after he had left. So some people, it's very quick. They realize, I can't believe I was in this. And they start reading, you know, Russell Miller, and they start reading, you know, Lawrence Wright, and they really start to get a real sense of what Hubbard's all about. So, you know, try to keep in mind whenever you talk to anybody, they may be on a different part of their journey, and that may change. And I do occasionally hear from people that say, you know, if you were a little less brutal to L. Ron Hubbard, you may have some more exes that want to cooperate with you. And I'm just like, you know, I'm sorry, somebody's got to tell them the truth about this guy. Yeah. And that's why I have every single day at the Underground Bunker, I have something that L. Ron Hubbard said on that date at some point in history that's absolutely ludicrous, because I want people to see. Because, you know, you can read an entire magazine story about Scientology that's really well done, about the abuses of the Sea Org and about the, you know, spying they've done on people and the stuff they've done in the courts. You can read an entire magazine article about Scientology and really not get any sense of what L. Ron Hubbard was actually talking about. That's something that very few journalists actually want to get into. Some of them do it well, but most of them don't. And I just feel like that's a service we're doing for the public, is you need to see how ridiculous many of these ideas are and how ludicrous his statements are in his lectures. Yeah. Because I want these exes to be challenged by that. I mean, some of them really don't like my website because of that. Just today, I was hearing from a guy that's upset that we had published something about Dianetics that he didn't like. So I just feel like that's something that they need to hear, and if they still want to admire Hubbard and still do their auditing, that's fine. You know, as long as they're not hurting other people the way the church is.
But also, they need to stop for a second and take a look at what he said about the past lives of a tomato or some shit, and then really kind of take into consideration where they're getting their information from. I did watch when Leah Remini's Scientology in the Aftermath came out. I watched that whole thing, and then we started kind of cruising down the rabbit hole of other ex-Scientologist YouTubers, and Marty Rathbun is one of those that, like, when I very first saw him, which I think was in my Scientology movie, even though he was out and he was kind of in that production, I always kind of felt like he was somebody that was very hesitant about leaving the church. Now that you see more stuff that he's doing now, it's kind of like apparent that he's still maybe a little bit more softballing, and I saw your reaction. He's probably gone back to Scientology and he's just being a mouthpiece for the whole thing. Does not like you whatsoever. And
Well,
What?
the things he's saying about Leah Remini and Mike Rinder are disgusting.
Oh, I know.
The lies he's telling about me and these videos that he makes, Scientology uses in its advertisements. I mean, I don't want you to have any illusion. He's working for the Church of Scientology.
No. That's exactly what I'm saying, because whenever I watch the stuff that he has done recently, which it wasn't even that recently, it was like last year, it was exactly like what Miscavige would love the most in a propaganda video.
Well,
Because
Miscavige is writing this material.
right.
There's no question.
Yeah, so he's supposedly out, and he's still speaking out against the against people who are seriously speaking out against Scientology. So I feel like it's like the angle from the other side of the boat, where he can kind of play it from both sides with this very high profile person who's come out and now has gone back.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you know the history, but when he came out in 2004, he vanished to the point where there were people online that were saying he died. And then in 2007 or 2008, he resurfaced, and he and Mike Rinder got together, and they started working with the Tampa Bay Times and produced one of the greatest things ever written about the Church of Scientology, the series by the Tampa Bay Times called The Truth Rundown. And it was Marty Rathbun and Mike Rinder and Jefferson Hawkins and A.B. Scobie and several others, and it was fantastic. And this was the first time that a whole group of top former Scientology officials were revealing what really goes on, and they changed the conversation. I mean, South Park in 2005 had made everyone laugh with the stuff about Xenu, but the stuff in the Tampa Bay Times was like, no, you need to take this seriously. And they really revealed the abuses in the Sea Org and the abuses by David Miscavige. And when that series came out, that's when Marty started his blog. And he really didn't know what he was doing. In fact, Mark Bunker secretly helped him set it up, because Marty didn't know anything about computers. So he got this blog going, and all these different ex-Scientologists were drawn to it, because here was somebody they knew from inside. They knew how high he had been. And his blog was revealing some amazing things. I said at the time, in 2009, 2010, I said that Marty Rathbun's blog was the single biggest threat to the continuing reign of David Miscavige in the Church of Scientology. And I meant it. It was really a serious weapon against Miscavige. And I've written a long story about how I traced the trajectory of that blog, because Marty almost immediately began fighting with the other exes, because, as we just discussed, exes are all over the place. They're, and Marty was trying to corral them all, and they weren't listening to him. It drove him crazy, because when he was in Scientology, what he says, people did, outside of Scientology, not so much. And by 2013, he was getting strange, But that's also the year that his wife filed her lawsuit for being harassed by the Church of Scientology. And that was an amazing lawsuit with a fantastic set of attorneys that were working so hard for 2 years, fighting off Scientology's, typical scorched earth tactics. And they were winning. They were winning amazingly. They were very close to getting David Miscavige into a witness chair. And then all of a sudden, Marty and Monique not just dropped their suit, but trashed their attorneys in court and said all kinds of lies about them. And it was stunning. And then never gave an explanation, never explained why they had suddenly given up a lawsuit that probably would have brought them about $10 million in damages and would have paid their attorneys for all the work they were doing. Their attorneys were cut out, didn't get a dime, were trashed in official court papers, and they wouldn't explain it. And of course, everybody came to me saying, Miscavige must have turned them, Miscavige must have turned them. And I was like, no, wait, let's try to figure this out. And then a year later, all of a sudden, Marty's putting out posts trashing Ron Miscavige and trying to sabotage his book, trashing Louis Theroux and trying to he did try to sabotage that movie, but when it was opening in theaters with what he wrote, he knew that would affect the BBC. Yeah. And then after that, he started making these videos. He's suddenly wearing this suit. He's in this professional setup. And he's just lying about Paul Haggis and Leah Remini and Mike Rinder and me and Steve Kinane. It was incredible. And then not too long after that, those videos started showing up in Scientology advertising. And I sent Marty an email. I said, "Are you being paid for these by the Church of Scientology?" And he called me a name, and I've never heard from him since. So, it's just really disappointing. I got to tell you, I loved working with that guy. We fought, we fought a lot over things. It was actually kind of fun. But it was fun to work with him. And it was just sad to see that he got so completely turned like that. And, he's not doing anything legitimate now. Everything he's doing is just lies and exaggerations. And why would he do that if he wasn't being paid for the church? So I don't think there's any lesson here other than, like people before him over the years, Scientology finds a way to turn people.
Mm-hmm. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to roll a video he did about you, Mike Rinder, and Leah Remini.
All right. You're just helping the Church of Scientology.
Well, no, we're gonna talk about it a little bit after.
When I began to break ranks publicly with this cult, the ASC, I received a blackmail threat from the ASC. Shut up, or we're exposing your crimes when you were in Scientology. And like I said, I laughed about it because I've been an open book, unlike Mike Rinder, who can't remember a goddamn thing about anything that he ever did to anybody. And keeps referring to all the stuff that happened on his watch as they, right? And so I laughed. 4 months later, they dragged some kid out who never said anything about this in the 4 months that they had him blathering on blogs, okay? Never mentioned my name, never mentioned anything. All of a sudden, they tried to ambush me with a 2020 special where this guy said that I participated in the cover-up of him being raped as a 15-year-old boy by an adult, okay? I never even heard of the guy in my entire life, all right? ABC didn't run with it. The point is, though, these people that are getting unlimited bucks for rolling out this infotainment, entertainment, quote-unquote docu-series reality show about quote-unquote sexual abuses being covered up, right? They're already demonstrated to have invented them. They invented it against me, okay? And ABC wouldn't run with it when they realized they were being taken to the cleaners, okay? And yet now they're going to do a whole season of this.
So what's the backstory there? I'm not familiar with that story.
He's talking about there's a young man named Serge Gill who came forward. And Serge has a lot of allegations about being sexually abused when he was in the Sea Org. He also has some stunning stories, which I completely confirmed, that his job was to interrogate older guys about their sexual habits. We know he did this because other people did it, and I've talked to people that have been through it. And it was disgusting the way Scientology would use a young man. He was only 14 or 15 years old. And Serge's job was to interrogate, sex check men in their 30s and 40s about what they'd fantasized about while they jerked off. That's Scientology.
Weird.
That's what Scientology does. Okay. And I confirmed that. I talked to a couple of Scientologists who went through those interrogations about it, okay? And Claire Headley remembered David Miscavige praising Serge Gill as one of the best interrogators in the entire organization. So I know that happened. Now, as far as his allegations of being actually sexually abused, one of the allegations he made to me was that Marty Rathbun knew what was going on. He wasn't saying that Marty abused him. He said that Marty knew what was going on. So I called up Marty as a journalist doing his job and said, Marty, listen, this guy Serge Gill says he was being abused and that you were aware of it. And he said to me, Tony, I don't even know who you're talking about. And that didn't happen. And so you know what, guys? I didn't write a story about it. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
He said. Can't.
That's it.
You can't.
That's it. Now he turns that into they were blackmailing me because I dared to disagree with them. You see what I'm saying? This is classic Scientology. You take something that actually happened and completely twist it around 180 degrees in order to attack those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I did write about the parts I confirmed that Serge Gill was an auditor who was quizzing older guys about sex. It's a great story. I'm proud of it. And it was actually a lot better than what ABC put on 2020. Or it wasn't 2020. It was, I guess it was 2020. And I did use the thing that I couldn't confirm that Marty denied. And as far as I knew, he didn't know the guy. Now, some other people have come. I think Aaron Smith Levin did a video saying that there's no way that Marty could not have known Serge Gill and he must have been lying. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just saying that what I did was what any journalist would do. I heard an allegation. I know Marty Rathbun. I went to him. I asked him about it. He denied it. Since I didn't have any more evidence one way or the other, I didn't write it.
Yeah.
And yet he claims that was a blackmail attempt. You see what I'm saying? Those are the kind of lies he is telling about me, about Leah, about Mike, and the Church of Scientology is then using those in their videos to smear us 24 hours a day, day in and day out. They spend millions of dollars trying to destroy us that are just trying to get the truth out about this organization. And because we're interviewing the same people and we're, finding the same information that Scientology's been doing for 20, 30 years, they accuse us of being a cult, which is so stupid.
Yeah.
If you knew how much Mike and Lee and I disagree.
Well, no, that's like one of the things that I generally like. The reason you're the go-to source, especially for people like us who are generally, I'd go beyond skeptical and I'd say we're like cynics, right? That's like part of our brand, is that your shit comes with receipts every time. You're not writing your opinion. It's not like some kind of free association thing you're doing on your blog. You're not making all these videos and you're not really making it about yourself, which is like, we're making this about ourselves. Let's make no mistake here. But like this, where it's a different thing. We're like trolls, polemicists, we like to make fun of things, but not running with that story, for some people would have been a hard decision, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that for you, because it was he said, not running with that story was one of the easiest decisions you ever made.
It's just, it's the standard kind of thing. And there are a number of things like that he twists and in ways that are so just awful. It's just a shame to see what he's become. And I really feel for those attorneys that worked so hard and then they aren't getting a penny of whatever Miscavige is paying Marty. So it's just a terrible situation.
Yeah. And it probably goes along the same lines as what we were talking about earlier about the stages of leaving Scientology. The coming to terms with the idea that everything that you have worked very, very hard for has been a lie will scramble your brain in ways that are like not even on a menu anymore. It's just like it's so hard to predict what the outcome is going to be and how that's going to be dealt with and what kind of reality you're going to break from. And the way that Scientology ties things into your work, your family, your friends, they make you disassociate without you even realizing that you're disassociating. Because if you can't convert your friends to Scientology, then they will make you too busy to even associate with those people anymore, because you got to clear the planet, and that is the whole goal. And if these SPs are going to keep you from doing that, then you need to reassess what you're doing, and maybe you don't just have time for all this. And then if you leave the cult, then all these people that you really have invested time and money and your life with will disassociate from you. What a fucking precipice to be on. And that's what kind of pisses me off so much about the whole situation. It's like people like you and like Leah and like Karen and Chris and everybody and Mark Bunker, we love Mark Bunker, who purposefully have the spotlight on them. So maybe all those other fuckers will leave the people who are just trying to put their lives back together alone. It's like, it's just like being a lightning rod for it. And the ones of us that are strong enough to be able to handle it, we're there for it and for helping out as much as we can. And, and and like Dave said, you being a go-to source specifically because we can your receipts are to be relied upon.
Thank you.
Well, are there maybe I'll phrase this a little bit differently. In the past, have there been people inside of the Scientology movement that have leaked things to you? Oh
yeah, all the time.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know. I didn't know how. Maybe you don't want to throw any of your sources under the bus and stuff. I just wanted to be careful how I worded it.
Well, I'm not going to tell you about them, but
well, no, of course not. I wouldn't ask. Like that's like how you get your even like setting aside the fact that they'd be in danger in some way. That's also how you gain their trust. So you'd be just burning the trust too. So of course.
I mean, one of the best ones recently was when this whole coronavirus thing started, and I think when it really hit home for all of us, wasn't it that when Tom Hanks turned out to be infected, and then the same day we learned about Tom Hanks, they canceled the NBA season, and it was like, what? Whoa! I think that was like March 11th or something like that, and then March 13th was a Friday, and that's LRH's birthday, L. Ron Hubbard's birthday, founder of Scientology. And this year, normally they have it on like a Saturday night that's around the 13th, but because the 13th was a Friday night, they were going to do it that night. And by that Friday was when things were really shutting down all over the country, and they didn't have their birthday event, which this is the first time in 70 years they haven't done something like that. Mm-hmm. So, Miscavige was just livid. He sat down and wrote this bulletin, this secret bulletin, and then all the Scientologists were told to come in to the org to read it, which of course was a terrible idea because, everybody's getting in close to read this document. And I had heard something was going on, and I was just like, God, I want to know what they're doing, because this was something that I knew that there was, I'd heard something around it, that there was some Hubbard lectures they were being asked to read, but I knew there was some document, and I didn't think I was going to get it. And then all of a sudden, some person I'd never heard of before that's in the church said, would you like to see that document? And I said, yes, I would. And so I got a copy. So, thank goodness there are people like that who are in the Church of Scientology, but they're sneaking a look at the bunker. They know about it, and they know we want to know what's going on inside. So I do hear from people fairly often.
So the chat's having a little bit of fun here. So I think some of your people are in our Twitch chat, which is wonderful. Welcome to all, especially the new followers, by the way. But they're asking, I know you don't know and we don't know, but what do you think happened to Shelley? Like if you had to wager a guess.
Yeah, I've been writing about this pretty regularly for 8 years now, and I'm convinced she's at the CST headquarters compound in San Bernardino County, northeast of Los Angeles.
Is that the one in Hemet? Is that right?
No. See, the Hemet is gold base or int base, and that's where the hole is. And we know who's in the hole. I mean, Mike and I have both posted lists of all the prisoners in the hole. And if Shelley were in the hole, we would know about it. But no, she's not even at that base. That's where she and Dave were living, and that's where she was disappeared from. Okay, in late August or early September 2005, a week after Miscavige had this, he blew a stack over something she had done, and a week later she was packed into a car and took off, and they haven't seen her in the 15 years since. And there's multiple lines of independent evidence that all point to that smaller compound about 60 miles northwest of there, about 80 miles northeast of Los Angeles, near Lake Arrowhead, California. There's a little town called Twin Peaks, actually. And there's a compound they've had there that's the headquarters of a super secret Scientology entity called the Church of Spiritual Technology, or CST. I have never met a Scientologist like in the regular Sea Org, even people like Mike Rinder, who had ever been to a CST compound. Amy Scobie, she ran the Celebrity Center. She knew all the celebrities. She was in charge. She'd never even heard of CST. That's how secretive. CST is its own little tiny world. There's only one person who ever worked at CST that's come out and spoken publicly. His name's Dylan Gill. He's a great guy, and he's helped me out with several stories. And he helped build that place. And it's a small little compound. It's got very expensive stuff there. At that compound is where they make the materials that they want to last thousands of years from Hubbard, that they put into these titanium banker boxes and put in an underground vault. And they have said that they want it to last at least 6,000 years, so that if there's a civilization collapse, Scientology can rebuild the world.
Have you seen on their channel? Have you watched much of the 24-hour channel?
It's hard to watch any of it, but they did put together an amazing program about, if you're going to watch one thing on that awful propaganda channel, watch the show they did about the Hubbard Archive Project, because I'm astounded that they showed those scenes. I mean, that's stuff that is super secretive, but they showed it. I mean, they don't show you where it is. I know where it is, but anyway. There's multiple lines of evidence that they have kept her there for 15 years. The only time she got out, they let her out in the summer of 2007 just to go to the funeral of her father. But other than that, she's been at that compound for 15 years. And as John Brousseau says, who not only worked with Miscavige, but was actually his brother-in-law for about 15 years. John Brousseau says that, Miscavige will keep her there till she dies. And the police aren't doing anything about it. So it's just a real shame. People always say, oh, he must have killed her. No, twice recently, Scientology attorneys have claimed that they have spoken to her. And, because people, when the press starts asking questions, oh, she's fine. She's working on a special project. Those attorneys would not do that if she were dead. I mean, they would be risking their law licenses if they did that. So I do believe she's alive. I believe she's at that compound. I don't think she's doing very well. We had a possible sighting of her a couple of years ago, and I've talked to this woman multiple times. I talked to her once in a while. She lived up there. She saw this woman at a grocery store in Crestline, the nearest town there, and it did not look good. And I think Shelley's about 56 or 7 now. I should look it up. But anyway, this woman said this woman did not look good, but she did look like Shelley, and that's where she would be if they let her out. She would go to Crestline to get groceries and stuff. So I just think it's an amazing situation that the police aren't doing something. I know that members of Shelley's family have gone to the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office and said, we want you to do a welfare check. And they said, no, they need more evidence that she's there. It's just incredible. It's just amazing to me that David Miscavige can get away with banishing his wife for 15 years and nothing is done about it.
Yeah, it's never been our position that she was dead. We joke around and say she's scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush, right? but we're closer to the truth, I think, than people who claim she's dead.
She's working on material that she actually probably cares about. She adored L. Ron Hubbard, and she's working to archive his work for future generations. And she's probably resigned to her fate. She's not trying to escape. I think that even if she has decided that she will just sit there and work for Hubbard, why can't she come out and see her family, just like once a year? Why can't she, communicate with the outside world? I mean, it's just amazing that Miscavige can get away with this.
I mean,
it's amazing the stuff that he's been able to get away with this whole time. The stuff that Miscavige has been able to get away. I want to know, like, if you look at the old footage of, let's say, from was it Scientology and Me, the BBC one, with
John Sweeney.
John Sweeney. If you look at Mike Rinder back then, his eyes are as black as your glasses frames, and then you look at him now even on his own blog or on interviews that he does, and his eyes are just as blue as the sky. It's just
the other thing to notice about him in that first episode that Sweeney made, Mike had just been in the hole, and he had been in the hole for like a year, and they were starving them. I mean, they had to eat out slop out of a bucket. And go back and look at that series and look how skeletal he is compared to how healthy he looks now. Mm-hmm. And he told me he was in the hole. He had no hope of getting out of it. John Sweeney, in a certain way, kind of saved him from that fate, because Miscavige was panicking about Sweeney and the BBC, and he knew that Tommy Davis wasn't going to be able to handle it on his own, and so he pulled. That's why he pulled Mike Rinder out of the hole. Was he had to go handle Sweeney. And then you see him, he's just been in the hole, and he looks horrible.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned Davis. Davis is my favorite character of all of everything. Like, I know that he was like a terrible person, like doing bad things and trying to cover up for the cult of Scientology. But I got two things to say about him. One, about the Gish Gallop, right? That guy could run the Gish Gallop like nobody else in the world. And two, he wanted really badly to be Tom Cruise.
Well, he was Tom's gopher, and then he was sort of Tom's handler. And I thought it was kind of amazing that after he got his head chopped off and then sort of went off in the wilderness for a while, he ended up being a studio head. He was running his own Hollywood studio for about a year. That fell apart. But don't feel sorry for that guy. I don't. So much money.
My favorite character, like you like the bad guy in a movie. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not like I thought he was a good person. When there were rumors for a while that he was like being like a hedge fund manager after he got out, and I was like, well, that sounds about right too. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, what kind of terrible person is a hedge fund manager? So it seemed like it. But it was weird because he disappeared for a while, and there were some questions like, "Where's Tommy Davis? Where's Tommy Davis?" And I was like, "Uh-oh, maybe he's in a hole in the desert somewhere." And it turned out like he was just. I think if what I was told by Karen it was true, he left and he shut the fuck up for a little while before he did anything.
He got fired. He and Jessica. At that time, he was married to Jessica Feshbach, and they were the two top spokespeople for the church at that time. And what sealed his fate was Larry Wright's New Yorker story, because Davis did such a bad. I mean, he already had this whole string of wonderful failures with John Sweeney and Martin Bashir and all those confrontations. But Lawrence Wright just ran rings around him, and the best thing was that Lawrence Wright had gotten Hubbard's military records showing that he was never injured in battle. And Tommy Davis was like, look, that's central to the Dianetics story. If Hubbard was not injured in the war, then he didn't heal himself with Dianetics after the war, and the whole thing is a lie. And Lawrence Wright's writing that down, right? And he puts it. He couldn't believe his luck. He puts that in the story, and then what happens? He gets the military records and proves that he wasn't injured. It was just amazing that Tommy would say that, because he really kind of set himself up. So that happened in October 2010. The story came out in February.
This is also long ago. It all feels so fresh just because of like what a character that Tommy Davis cat was, right? But it's 10 years ago.
So Larry's story, The Apostate, about Paul Haggis and with this stuff about Tommy Davis, shows up in the New Yorker in February 2011. In March 2011, I found a record that the Church of Scientology had bought 2 new URLs. Who is TommyDavis.com and who is JessicaFeshbach.com. So that tells you that that's when he got his head chopped off, and Miscavige was preparing to create smear sites about the 2 of them if they didn't cooperate, but they obviously did. And they left and went to Austin, where Jessica's father, who had passed away a couple years earlier, the family still had this very expensive condo. And so they moved into that, and Jessica started doing real estate. And then Tommy went to work for his dad's best buddy, Tom Barrack, in Santa Monica, who's this, it wasn't a hedge fund. What Tom Barrack does is he buys and sells real estate, except he doesn't buy houses. He buys subdivisions, right? And he owns hundreds of thousands of structures around the country, and trades, buys and sells, and he's a very big deal. Tommy Davis became, for Tom Barrack, what he was to David Miscavige. So he was, like, for example, I noticed one day that Tom Barrack was going to be on CNBC. Well, CNBC is actually broadcast from a studio in New Jersey, not in New York. And somebody had spotted that Tommy Davis was there setting up the whole thing and let me know. And I had, so I had Tommy's email. I said, Tommy, I'm in New York, you're in New Jersey. Is there some way we can get together for lunch, And he was not happy about that. He called me a name and said, never email me again. And, but then what was interesting, what happened to him was, he had gotten to know James Packer really well. Tom Cruise had done some favors for James Packer, who's this rich Australian magnate, son of a famous industrialist. And so Packer had gotten sucked into Scientology for a while, like from, I think, Steve Kinane wrote about this, 2001 to 2006, something like that. So James Packer was in for a while and had left, but he still liked Tommy. He and Tommy and Tom Cruise have been pretty close. So James Packer then pulled him away from Barrack, and James Packer had this small studio in Hollywood called Rat Pack Entertainment, and he put Tommy in charge of it. How about that for a rebound? You get your head chopped off by Miscavige, and 2 years later, you're running a Hollywood studio. So then we started getting these photos of him hobnobbing with all these, celebrities. It's just like, oh, Tommy, you living a charmed life. And then it was kind of interesting. Then the next year, 2016, I think, turned out to be this disastrous year for Packer. Mariah Carey dumped him. The Chinese government was cracking down on the casinos he was trying to start there, and some of his employees actually got arrested.
Oh no.
There were several things that happened to him. His life fell apart, and he ended up selling his part of the studio, and Tommy was out of a job. So Tommy only got to be the big studio guy for a short period. So now he's back with Barrack again. Last we heard.
So it occurs to me that if Tommy had gone the other way and started criticizing the Church of Scientology, that shit that he did to everybody else, he would have been trying to do that to Scientology, and that would have been very annoying for them, I think. Because he was real good at that propaganda game.
Mike Rinder has called him out on that and said, you know all the terrible things that Scientology does to people. When are you going to cough it up? And I think they're very unhappy that he's, has left, and there's just no consequences for it. And I guess Tommy's probably got some kind of a deal with Miscavige of some sort, but he's not. He did give one deposition in the Winnie Grathman case in 2013, and he said that he was on leave from the Sea Org, but he was still a member of the Church of Scientology.
Okay, that makes sense. Like, what do they call it? A public Scientologist, where you're allowed to like have a job and like live a fairly normal life, versus like when you're like all the way in. Is that kind of like where he's supposedly at right now? Then
I doubt that he's really involved at all now. He's probably got nothing to do with it, except that he can't say anything because he doesn't want to. His mother is such an important part of the whole thing. So.
An Archer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like really crazy. That's really
And then
crazy.
he just got married. He and Jessica broke up, and which was kind of sad because they had 2 little girls. But he just got married again in Morocco last year to an Egyptian actress. So we wished him well. We were sad that we weren't invited, but
Well, if he's out and he got married and he's like doing his thing, then I guess I'm kind of happy for him. If he managed to like land soft without them really coming after him. Although, like I said, man, if they would have come after him, I don't know. My money's on Tommy Davis because that guy's a fucking asshole.
I want to talk to Sweeney just so I can get from him like what it felt like to be able to scream in his face, even though that's what Tommy wanted. But just to have that satisfaction, just to be like, bah! Just rage on him. Oh, that would have been amazing, wonderful.
So I
Sweetie can't give a public appearance without having to do that for everybody again.
Yeah, yell at us. Come on, you freak out on us. Freak out on us, John. Freak out on us.
I don't know how many times I've seen him do it.
So I just wanted to. I wanted to ask real quick because I have a guess. I'm going to guess that the cult of Scientology hasn't really tried to fair game you too much because you're not a former member and because you're like doing kind of hard news about them. But I'm open to being wrong. What is your experience?
You would guess wrong, my friend.
Oh, well, I'm glad to call you a friend now. But no, that's one of the things around here. We're open to being wrong. Obviously, I just guessed that maybe because you were doing hard news about them, that they would be inclined to leave you alone because even they like know that that's a bad look. But I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, they spend a lot of money trying to destroy my life, and the sad thing is that they're such weenies about it. They never. They first of all, they don't answer my emails when I ask for comment on these stories that I'm working on, and then they never call me up afterwards and say, "Listen, this is just a wrong fact. You need to change this." Because I would be open to that. I want to get the facts right, but instead of ever interacting with me, they've sent a private investigator twice to intimidate my mother in California.
Oh.
They have, they call up my old colleagues and they call up my friends and they try to fake them out and pretend they're somebody else to try to get them talking about me. I told Leah on her show that, one of the most disgusting things they did is they had a out of work daily newspaper reporter pretend that he was working on a story about my wife to try to freak out her employers, to try to get her fired in order to harm me. And they tried that caper twice, which was kind of stupid because the second time around, her employers were like, "You're doing this again," But just really disgusting ways they try to harm your life. I mean, they do it to Mike, they do it to Leah. I always tell people, well, if they weren't doing it to me, I'd feel left out. But they're constantly smearing me online. They make these videos about me that are all full of lies. And they spend a lot of money. I mean, I remember that at one point, a private investigator of theirs tried to call on somebody in my life in New York, and 2 days later was knocking at the door of somebody I know in California. And they've also tried to intimidate people I know in Israel, in Indonesia. I mean, it's just no expense is spared. I mean, it's just incredible what their budget is to try to destroy Leah Remini, destroy Mike Rinder, and destroy me. And it's constant. It's all the time. And they just tried another operation on my wife 2 months ago. Once again, trying to convince her employers. My wife at one time went on the, remember when Anonymous was really going in 2008, 2009? They had some wonderful web forums where just, people would talk about the protest they did that day, or they'd bring up, we found the new Scientology document. And they were wonderful forums. I checked them every day looking for information. And at that, before I even knew my wife, she would go on those forums and joke around with people and trade information. And, she was asking people about science. She was curious about it, too. And that's it. She just was one of many, many people that went on a forum to discuss things. Well, Scientology considers Anonymous a terrorist organization. So what they do is they go to my wife's employers and say, do you know that you've hired a terrorist? I'm serious. It's incredible.
I know you're serious. And it's stories like that I've heard before too, that literally made me go, like, when I started doing this show, like, really regularly, and we started talking to people who were more and more high up in the ex-Scientology community, I straight up went and told my boss, I'm like, look, I do a show about Scientology, and if anybody ever calls you with any weird shit, just remember that. And he was like, okay. And then he started watching our show, and he like subbed and stuff. And he was like, okay, I get it now. When's the next one? And so I had to cover that base, because I was like, you know what? You never know. They could be bored. They could have somebody that they need to train on, like, squirrel busting or something, and they're just going to use me
I've developed this Eye of Sauron theory, because it does come and go. I mean, there's always this constant online stuff they're throwing at me and Mike and Leah. But we've talked about this. Each one of us will get really bad. Like they'll be accosting our family members and messing with people that, we work with, and then it'll kind of go away for a while. And my theory is it's kind of like the Eye of Sauron. Miscavige is like this eyeball, and he's like looking around and he's like, he'll look at Leah and say, what have you done again to mess with Leah lately? And his little underlings suddenly run and, quickly organize an operation to mess with Leah. And then he's looking over at Mike, and then he's looking at me, and so it kind of comes and goes, but it's not fun. I don't enjoy it, but I wish they'd just call me up and, give me their side of the story. It'd be much better for them. It would be much better for them.
I like Mark Bunker's way that he goes about it. He just starts filming them back. And they're like, okay, so we're just going to stand here with cameras pointed at each other. Okay. And then they leave. But the whole, like, watching him try to even, because all the Clearwater City Council meetings, they post them all, and we watch them on the show sometimes. Watching them bring other committee heads in to try to explain to him like a child that you can't just make everything about Scientology, to the point where they're just like, you can't even, like, if you bring it up, I just want to let you know that we can't do anything about it, so don't even bother bringing it up. But it's like, you have to understand that he's not, and he says it in every single meeting, in every single video that I've ever watched, and he has nothing against the members of Scientology. He has nothing against people who believe in Scientology. It's the criminal activity and the gang-like practices that they have, and this like mafia almost mentality of like just scooping up territory is what he is not for. And it's the tentacles of how that mentality has made its way into that city council reminds me a lot of, and I don't know if you have heard, or you probably have, of Bethel, Bethel Church. And Bethel has done the same thing in Redding, California, where they have members on city council. They have members that are involved in law enforcement. They have members that are involved on the Chamber of Commerce. They have members. They have bought tons of property all around the city, and I keep throwing it out there. It's like Redding is like Clearwater 2.0, just with another different cult. And I'm very afraid for that. Not very afraid, but they'll get what they paid for. You know, if they want to take a $500,000 handout so they can, give it to their police department so Bethel can build a $93 million church. Okay, priorities. Got your priorities. But Mark is a hero, and I hope he gives them what for. And I really need to go and have lunch in downtown Clearwater with him someday.
When we can actually get together again.
Yeah, when we can actually get together again.
No, that Howdy Con. I really want to go to the Howdy Con, like when we can all do it again after this experience. Because we've met you now virtually. We met Mark virtually. I've been friendly with Karen for a while. I had a wonderful off the record conversation with Jeffrey. It'd be great if Andy Nolte showed up. No, that would not be great. Actually, he would.
That would not be great.
But what? I guess I was wrong about the about them not coming for you. Is it mostly been them calling people or has there also been some in-person stuff with them?
Like I said, a private investigator showed up at my mother's front door twice to intimidate her. It was, and then I mentioned that a private investigator had visited somebody in New York and somebody in California. And no, they do lots of in-person stuff. It's very creepy. There's two different kinds of Scientology investigations. And we've only recently learned about the kind they were doing with Ron Miscavige and with Pat Broker. They do have investigations where they really don't want you to know you're being investigated. And I talked to these two former cops that followed Pat Broker for 20 years, and they told me that, they were very good at not being noticed, and that's what Miscavige wanted. But most of the time when OSA is doing what it's doing, they're doing what they call noisy investigations. And that means it's not, getting the actual information they're trying to get is only really a secondary goal. The number one goal is just to freak you out. They want you to know you're being followed. They want you to know that your family members are being people are going to see them or calling them. They want you to know that your employer's, being harassed, because they know that it produces this feeling, this really awful feeling, and it causes, most of the time, it causes people to say, okay, I've had enough. And I've seen it time and again when people, and I don't blame people for not wanting to go through that. People, it's like, oh, I'm going to watch some videos and I'm going to chat in some rooms. It'll be fun. But then when somebody's, actually trying to undermine you and get you fired and, trying to turn your family against you, I mean, it gets very psychologically scary. And that's what they count on. They count on you creating the effect in yourself to then disappear and give up. And it usually works. I mean, I know plenty of times when it has worked, but it's something that Hubbard developed primarily between 1955 and 1967. And he wrote it all down. That's what's incredible. And, there's so many things that just blow my mind about this whole situation. Scientology has a playbook for how to destroy people's lives. Mm-hmm. And if the government were interested, they could just go down and read these documents and then look at how not only were they doing all these things to Paula Cooper in 1972, but they're doing it to Leah Remini in 2020. I mean, the same exact tactics. Yeah. It's amazing.
It blows my mind that they are not more interested. I mean, I got their hands full right now, and I can kind of understand why they are. But at the same time, even 2 years ago, even 3 years ago, the fact that they are not more concerned with. I mean, and it's not like they have to worry about they're not going to get any more money from them because they're in a tax shelter. They don't have to pay taxes. So it's at the same time, it's like all of these people come out of this with the same stories, and they're not related. They don't have any reason. They've never met each other. They don't know each other. All of that information is very well documented, and they come out with the same exact stories every time, and it does not even rustle one Jimmy in the government to go and say, you know what?
The testimony is all the same. The documents back it up. I mean, it's just amazing. But, as Mark Headley has said, until you have the murder weapon and it's still smoking and you have video of the murder, you're just not going to get these guys. It's just like the law enforcement requires so much evidence to do anything.
Because of their religious shelter.
Yeah, it's probably because that they're a little bit shielded by the fact that they're a religion, and religions enjoy certain protections under the law.
But there's been plenty of religions in the last few years that have been really come down hard on by the law enforcement. We've been seeing, there was a church in L.A. where the leaders got thrown in jail because they were trafficking in workers from foreign countries. Scientology does that every day.
Yeah, hello. So
what's the difference? What's the difference? Law enforcement is afraid of the Church of Scientology.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but that is the case. They know that if they start investigating, their loved ones are going to be targeted. Mm-hmm. Their pets are going to be targeted. They know this. I know everyone thinks that law enforcement is invincible, and if Scientology is really breaking laws, then it's just a matter of enforcing them. No. These are human beings making a decision. I don't want to mess with these people.
Yeah. Because they see what happens to somebody whenever they just want to shine a sucks light at the end of their building. Like Reckless Ben did. And you know what's funny is that it's not funny, but what we were saying earlier about, people being so programmed by it. I remember watching an episode of Reckless Ben's thing where he went in to be audited, and he was there all day, and that lady just asked him to retell one story over and over and over again, and it took his friends like hours to deprogram that out of him, and he went in there with the mindset that it was all bullshit, and he knew it was, but still the way that they work is like they take your pain and turn it into a joyful experience.
That video was brilliant. I didn't like everything they did, but that particular video was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Just real quick, that dude Zoot just resubbed to us on Twitch. Thanks, that dude Zoot. You're a real one.
You are a real one. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that they did was very, very goofy. But the stuff that like when he went and signed up for the Sea Org and the auditing session, and then when they finally busted him. Those three portions of that whole series were very, very good, and I haven't watched their episode or whatever they did on Stephen Mango's channel where they did an interview with him because Stephen Mango's annoying. So, but yeah, I'm so glad that somebody finally got some real good raw footage of how they program you, and then even going in with the mindset that you are not going to be programmed, you still have a fucking serious chance of coming out with it anyway. And
it was amazing. Amazing footage.
That opened up a third eye in my Scientology BS radar, and it was very good, very, very good. Producer Dave, you got anything else? Did you want to do?
Well, what up? I have this video up here. It's a little bit long. We might do a little bit of it. But what I'm wondering is, and maybe you don't know the answer to all this because you're not the one that gets all this stuff. Are these Zoom meetings that we see videos from? We're seeing a lot of them under this shelter in place. Are these Zoom meetings that were publicly broadcast and we're picking up? Somebody found it like on a Facebook Live and grabbed it, or is some of this stuff that we're picking up being leaked? I'm curious because like a Zoom meeting, you have to have an invite to, and they're probably not publishing this stuff publicly, right?
That's a good question. Rod Keller got this one for us, and I don't know exactly the answer to the question on this one. The other ones that we've been posting, what's been kind of fun during the pandemic is Scientology's been posting these videos on their various Facebook pages. And I don't know if this Rob Meister video was there or not, but most of the ones we've been like, did you see the one of the guy doing the real creepy touch assist to the doll?
Oh my God. So that was like one of our, it's like the media wench likes to laugh, but it's hard to make her laugh so hard she can't talk. And she couldn't talk for a couple minutes because I said, that's not a doll. That's a real girl who they just let out of the Sea Org.
That was posted on their Facebook page.
Right. No, we saw that. Yeah. Was it Orlando? Scientology
but
Orlando?
I don't know about this one. Yeah, Orlando. I don't know about this one. I don't know where Rob found this one for us. But Rob Meister is kind of an interesting guy. He's an Australian musician, very talented guy. And when the Freewinds had their measles case and were quarantined, and those poor Scientologists were stuck on the ship for like, I don't know how many weeks, and couldn't go anywhere. He was one of the people that was stuck there because he was one of the, they have musicians that perform. And so he started putting a few things online about what it was like, what life was like on the ship. And I grabbed those to show people. He's taking it all down now. But I don't know. I kind of felt for the guy. He was just there doing a job playing music, but he is a Scientologist, no question. So that was the sort of background. When Rod Keller brought me this video, I was like, oh, I remember this guy. But he got into past lives. And see, this is, again, why the sort of benefit of the pandemic for us is that Scientology is usually very shy about stuff like past lives and touch assists. And, the face they try to give the public, describes Scientology almost as like it's a business seminar. And they don't talk about this stuff publicly, but they're so desperate to hold on to the people that they have who are stuck at home that they're putting this stuff out. And it's just, I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, the Sunday services slay me.
Oh my!
They have the book, they have the Dianetics out, or the Stable Datum, or wherever the hell it is, and they're like, Chapter 18, Paragraph 2. Oh my God! And I'm like, this is like not even close to what your church started out as, but now you're doing Sunday services and citing verse and prose like a Bible out of Dianetics. Pinch me, I'm dreaming. This is not real thing. This is not a real thing. But I mean, like you said, they got to hold on to their members that are at home somehow. They have to be able to feel like they're justifying that $300 or $500 or $600 or however much they're sending to them every once in a while to get a new course and a new book. So shit.
Right.
So you mentioned the ship that got the measles. That made our Sunday show that does news. And the local news reports from, I think it was at Aruba. Where were they? I forget where it was at. I forget exactly where they tried to dock, but some of those
San Lucia.
Some of the local news reports about that were fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Because the local news people weren't having none of it, right? Like it's not like LA or Florida or wherever where Scientology has a big presence. The local news was having none of it.
It was such a perfect story because it was like you have the whole anti-vax nonsense in the United States, and then you got the Church of Scientology, but then you have a whole cruise ship quarantine. I mean, it was this perfect combination of elements. Really took me by surprise. I was one of the first, not the very first, but I was one of the first people to report what was going on because I happened to notice a cruise blogger who had first mentioned saying, hey, I think that quarantine ship is Scientology's. And so I started searching and found information, and NBC really gets credit for being the very first. But I was in that mix that afternoon. That was fun. That was wild. And so then it really kind of exploded. And I was surprised at how big it got. And then I got invited to be on CNN on that. And what was interesting to me was they never posted that segment on their website. After having me on to talk about the Freewinds, they never posted it. I wonder about that.
Yeah, I saw that story and I was like, you know what? I was like, this is everything that we love to talk about in one fucking story right here.
It is, yeah.
Everything we love to talk about.
Yeah. Every once in a while, the Scientology ends up putting the kibosh. It's not even because they have sent threats, but just because the organization itself, like you said before, just doesn't want to deal with the blowback that they're going to get from the organization. There was a show that was supposed to come out in Australia called, was it Scientology Black Ops?
Yeah.
Do you have any insight onto that, or is there?
Well, I got to break that news. Sadly, I was very sad about it. I was interviewed for that. Brian Seymour was in New York in December and asked me to come, and I described. I'm reluctant. I don't want to scoop Brian on his own story, so I'm not going to discuss what he had found. I could just say it was fantastic new material about a couple of different disgusting, dirty tricks, OSA spying operations that Scientology ran recently. One very recently, one not so recently, but and just amazing, just amazing material. And he asked me. He interviewed me because he wanted me to put it in context of Scientology's history of dirty tricks, so I talked about Snow White, and he asked me about my own harassment, that kind of thing. So I was happy to do that. And then he also said he was interviewing Paul Haggis, and they were going to, put this all together. I had no idea it was going to be a 10-parter. I was surprised. And he contacted me and said it's going to be on July 9th or whatever day it was. And they're going to stream them. And they'll all be available at 6 a.m. Sydney time. And I was like, they're going to put them all out at the same time, because usually you would think if you made a 10-part series, you'd put one out and the next day and the next, whatever. I was like, okay, wow, I'm going to mark that on my calendar because Sydney time for New York is very weird. You got to figure out, it's like a day later before, whatever. So I had it kind of figured out. And then I heard from him that, well, there's been a delay. It's going to be, instead of the 9th, it's going to be the 14th. And this was after the trailer was out. And also there was a trailer. I mean, that's another thing that was kind of unusual.
Last week, yeah.
You don't always see a trailer for something like that. So the trailer was out, and then suddenly they were saying it's going to be 5 days later. I said, okay, that's fine. So I marked that date and the time and everything. And I was trying to think of ways to, we could sort of, participate at the bunker maybe as soon as all 10 were out. We could have a series of stories about them and all that. And I was trying to figure out what to do exactly. And then I was looking at the clock. I was like, wait a minute. I'm trying to do the math. I was like, I think it's already way past 6 a.m. on the 14th in Sydney. It was only the afternoon here in New York on the 13th. And I did the calculation. I was like, wait a minute, that thing was supposed to be live like 4 hours ago. What's going on? And then I went to the website and the trailer was gone.
Ooh.
So I then got some information. I emailed Brian and he's not talking. I guess they shut him down or whatever. But I did get some confirmation that it was not delayed again. It was killed.
As soon as I saw that it was delayed, I was like, uh-oh. I was like, this thing might not be happening.
Not delayed. And it was killed. And I just immediately, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning here. I went ahead and put up a story and said again that I can't reveal what I know about it. But this is shocking. The money and expense and time that they put into that to just kill it the day it was supposed to come out or whatever. Some people have asked me, was it timing? Was it the fact that Kelly Preston had died? I don't think that has anything to do with it. Even though Travolta might show up in it, I don't think he's the focus of it. And I just don't think that that would have anything to do with it. This was something else. I don't know exactly. An Australian website has claimed, this sounds like Channel 7 News spin to me, but an Australian website has claimed that one of the people interviewed in the series had changed their story and that this caused them legal problems. I don't think that's true. I think that sounds like network spin to me.
And the other thing with that is it's real easy to be like, you can just say in the thing, like put like text right under it, be like, this person has since recanted this story that they're telling us here. That's easy enough to do. You can
edit that. You can easily edit that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the story is going to come out. And But did you see how the other network, 9 News, sort of taunted them?
No, but that's our shit right there. That's our jam. If the other news network taunted them, we would love a link to that to play that, because that's like where we're at. Like that's the stuff we
so
like.
About 18 hours or so after I broke the story that Channel 7 had killed their series, Channel 9, which has 60 Minutes Australia, suddenly reposted their story they did with me about Shelley Miscavige, and on Twitter specifically pulled out the clip of me going to the Twin Peaks compound to ring the doorbell. And I think that was, pretty obvious that they were saying, what, you guys wimped out? We didn't. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what they were doing.
We're keeping our eye out. If you had to guess, do you think that this story, because it's already been edited and kind of put together because it was about to come out, do you think we're going to see it on like torrent sites? Do you think it's going to get leaked?
That may be the only way we're going to see it. I know a lot of people have asked, why can't it just go to another network or bring it over to an American network? It doesn't really work that way. It can work that way if you're talking about, like a series that's been produced by an independent production company and one network changes its mind. That production company then may take that product to another network that'll pay for it. But this was an in-house news production, and they're not going to hand over their footage to anybody else.
I'm going to be honest. If it gets leaked and we find it, we'll send it to you, but only after our Thursday show where we watch some of it our fucking self.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Like, we like you, but we're still in it to win it, The thing is, once we leak it to you, like, people will have heard about it because nobody fucking watches this show. So,
well, we'll see what we can do about that.
No, we've had pretty good numbers for our live show tonight, and I think the YouTube video is going to do well. But the thing is, the reason is that people like you because you're credible and you don't fuck around. Like we were saying at the beginning, like you. First of all, I love the format of your blog post, because you have the story. If there's any pertinent video, you put it a little lower in the story so that people read your fucking story. Good on you for that, because like you happen to be an okay news writer too, it turns out. So, but then under it, you talk about like, from the free zone, and then you mention, like, I forget what the other categories are under it, but like it's kind of fun and like. And
I have
personable.
I have a quote from Hubbard on that date in history called Source Code, and then I have Overheard in the Free Zone, something that I've taken from what the indies are talking about, and then I have what we call Random Howdy. There was a beloved commenter named Stephen Cox who went by the name Captain Howdy, and for years he just wrote really amazing stuff in the comments section, and that's how we came up with the name HowdyCon. We actually named our little convention after him. And when I was coming up with those little elements, I was, we got Hubbard and his ludicrous stuff, and then we got these indies being bizarre. I felt like we need something rational to counteract all that. And I started going back through Howdy's comments, and I was just amazed. I mean, the stuff he came up with, and not just the stuff he had to say about Scientology that was smart, but the stuff about his own life. He was an old punk rocker, and he was going through some tough challenges with his health, but he was still so funny and witty, and so I just pull something out of his thousands and thousands of comments and just throw it up there. Because I want people to have fun. It should be a fun website. People have, once in a long while, I will hear from an ex-Scientologist who's angry with me that I'm not more sort of, just attacking the church. And if you read the site, that there are some really critical stories of the church and some really grim stories about people as being abused. But you can't do that day in and day out. I mean, people will just not want to come to the site. There's got to be some fun, and there's got to be a little bit of counter programming. So that's why I do that.
Well, the other thing is this stuff is there's just something funny about it. Like that's like what I liked about Doug Kramer the most, is that he was pretty open about about the fact that there's just some funny. This is just funny and ridiculous in a way too. And if like you can't project that in some kind of way, you're not really telling the whole story. And like the thing that really damaged Scientology was that people started trolling them on the internet, and we can't really forget that like humor is like such an important tool. And if you're writing about something like this day in and day out, and you don't have a sense of humor about it, you're going to be like the most miserable motherfucker in the world, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And there's plenty to laugh at. I mean,
When that Tom Cruise video first came out, like the Tom Cruise video, that was like the apex and the straight downward fall from that point on, because people are like, wait, what?
But it was funny.
And they're like, they see the Hollywood side of somebody like Tom Cruise, somebody who does the interviews, always keeps himself. He has his oh my God, I'm having the worst brain fart. His handler, whatever, his publicist. So he's got you have your publicist, and then you have his is probably a Scientologist, right? Is his publicist a Scientologist, do you think?
Well, there's a whole history to that. I don't know if you want me to go into that or not, but that's a pretty wild story.
I mean, you can if you want. I won't be mad. We already have gone.
There's a whole...
It's late for you, so however much longer.
Well, I don't mind a little bit longer. There's a whole fascinating trajectory to Tom Cruise's involvement in Scientology. I mean, he got pulled in by Mimi Rogers when they started dating in 1985, and she got him in 1980. She got him into Scientology right after Hubbard had died in 1986. They were that's right. It was 1986 when they started dating, and they pulled him in. And so Scientology's timing was so good for Scientology, because the death of the founder is always a real challenge for an organization like this. Mm-hmm. And so they bring in Tom Cruise in 86. Tom and Mimi Rogers were married on May 9th, 1987. That's Dianetics Day. So that should tell you that by that time, he was already pretty hardcore. Yeah. And but Miscavige didn't like Mimi, because Mimi's father was a squirrel who ran his own indie shop. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a story about, this is actually when I was still working with Marty Rathman. Marty Rathman told me some great stuff about how Miscavige helped drive them apart and encouraged Tom to go after Nicole Kidman. And so then he marries Nicole Kidman. She's got her own issues, right? She's a Catholic. She's got this major psychologist father in Australia. But at first, she, she's married a Scientologist. She wants to be down with it. She starts working very hard. Her auditor was Bruce Hines. And Bruce says that she got up to OT2. I mean, that's pretty dedicated. She had to work very hard to get to that point. But they were married in 1990. By 1992 or so, she was done. She'd had enough of Miscavige. She didn't like him, and we didn't know this till many years later. She pulled him out of Scientology, and he was almost entirely out from about 92 all the way to when they broke up in 2000, with a few exceptions. In 98, he went down to the Hollywood Celebrity Center and did some things with Tommy Davis, but basically, Tom Cruise was out of Scientology, and it drove Miscavige crazy. And he had spies in Tom Cruise's household. I've done a story about one of his spies. And then when Tom and Nicole broke up in 2000, as Marty Rathman has famously said, David Miscavige said, "Job one, get Tom back in." And that's what Marty Rathman was doing for the next 3 or 4 years, is auditing Tom to bring him back in. By 2004, they had spun him up to be the most hardcore, gung-ho Scientologist on the planet. And Miscavige wanted to take advantage of that. He wanted to send Tom out to be Scientology's ambassador to the world. Well, there was a problem. Tom Cruise had this old school publicist named Pat Kingsley, and she was, a legend. And she had made sure to keep a very, good wall between this Scientology shit and his real work in Hollywood. So you know what? They replaced Pat Kingsley with Tom's own sister.
Oh.
His own sister became his publicist. And then they were able to send him out, and he went on Oprah's couch, and he had his argument. He had his argument with Matt Lauer, and he argued with other journalists, and he came off like a complete lunatic.
Mm-hmm.
So that ended pretty quickly, and he has gone back to not saying anything about Scientology. And I honestly don't know who his publicist is today. But that was part of that operation. Was you got to get this legendary publicist out of the way so his sister can come in and, you know, we can use him the way we want to. So that's an interesting part of that whole history.
Right.
So before we let you go to bed here, I found that I started looking into the cult in like 2003, 2004. A good friend of ours ran off to Clearwater and joined the Sea Org, right? And I don't know if this happens to you too, but when you are observing other events, doesn't matter what they are, do you find yourself wondering if when you see parallels to Scientology, if it's just like sort of your bias from having watched this thing for so long, or if maybe that you're right and that there are other like kind of cult-like behaviors out there and cult-like groups out there that people need to be aware of, and like that maybe folks like us who have been following the cult for a while have an insight that we can share with people about other issues.
Well, all controlling organizations use the same techniques. And it's funny to me when, you know, eBay turns out to be bullying people and, you know,
like
sending private
bullying too, by the way,
sending private investigators and trying to destroy people. I know it's coming. I don't even have to, you know, look it up. Somebody's going to say, God, they're acting just like Scientology. But, you know, Scientology is acting just like the mafia, right? I mean, it's all these controlling organizations use the same techniques over and over again. Scientology did not invent them. So, yeah, I you know, it's part of my job to look for parallels. And so, you know, so many times some person somewhere will do some crazy thing, and I just very quickly pull up my computer and say, well, let me see if we got any completion records on that person, you know, because because it happens. You know, the woman in California who basically got Orange County to fire its health director and get rid of its mask order, guess what? She's a Scientologist attorney. You know, I mean, it's just the connection. They're everywhere, and you know, I'm always trying to. And most of the time when I check these people out, there's no connection, but I don't want to miss something. You know,
right?
Yeah, I was talking to ATAC a little bit about conspiracy theory movements, and how they don't necessarily like one-to-one track with something like Scientology because it's like more distributed, but a lot of the stuff is still the same, where it's like this distrust of medical science. We have the answers. We're going to help make you happy. And they call you a shill, or some people that have called our show mad at us for making fun of them might have called us a CIA agent or whatever.
Yeah.
And
NSA or fucking some alphabet soup group.
And, you know, I think that even people who don't care necessarily about Scientology could do well to learn a little bit about it, and especially like through your work, because you didn't come at this after having been in the cult or anything, but you like apply skepticism, critical thinking, and you just give people the facts about it. But I feel like people could learn about, you know, abusive relationships, conspiracy theory movements, political ideologies that are authoritarian, and they could get a little more insight into that by like learning about cults and Scientology specifically, because it's been so in the media. And I'm not even sure that that's a question. It's just like something that I think has helped us along our way when we're thinking about other things, having been interested in Scientology and its organization and the way it steps on people. And I think that gives us a perspective that maybe other folks in our lane don't have, you know?
Well, it probably wouldn't surprise you to learn that a lot of Scientologists are QAnon fans, you know?
Oh, no. Oh, no. The tunnel children. Oh, no.
How long until Scientology scoops up Jordan Peterson?
You know, isn't it weird the way he kind of disappeared and all of a sudden his life is a shambles? I mean, this is a guy that was making like, what, $20,000 a month just through his YouTube channel or something?
And 60 grand on Patreon.
Yeah, that's what it was. 60 grand a month on Patreon the guy was making.
So a guy that we know that does a satire site, like it's called the Gish Gallop. You might want to check out their site. It's pretty funny. But they did a story that I was like, hey, you should probably do this story because Jordan Peterson had gotten himself addicted to essentially psych drugs, saying that, you know, Tom Cruise went down there and inked a 5-year deal with him for when he comes out. But then if you watched the video that he did with his daughter, he threw psychiatry under the bus like 3 or 4 times during that video and was trying to blame them. But I try to be careful about this. I'm never careful about anything. Like that guy, if he's having struggles with drugs, that sucks. But like, don't blame the fucking psychiatrist. And the other thing is, like, he spent a lot of time telling everybody else how to live their life, so maybe he could learn a little humility from this. But it's, you know, it's leave it to Media when she does a good Peterson impression to bring that up. But it's again, like Scientology, when I'm looking at these sorts of cults of personality like Jordan Peterson, it doesn't hurt me that I've learned about L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology, because there's a lot of it's the internet. It's a new age. Like, people can connect with each other instantly, and L. Ron Hubbard did all this stuff in meat space. But like, understanding this kind of stuff, even on just like, and I like to make fun of it, and I'd like to understand it a little more level, like really helps me when I'm examining, you know, things like the intellectual dark web or conspiracy movements or whatever.
Well, they all use the same rhetorical tropes. They all use the same, you know, ways of subverting logic. And so I think once you learn one of them, it will help you understand how another one works. And
love bombs, confirmation bias, all that stuff plays in.
Right. And people are always asking me, well, don't you want to learn more about this group and that group? I got my hands full. I've tried to do a little bit of watching Jehovah's Witnesses on the website. I was really glad that Leah did. And so I did a little bit on my website, but it's just hard. Especially now when the Danny Madison charges came down, it turned my life upside down. I mean, it's just been so crazy the last couple weeks. And then to have Kelly Preston and Ben Keogh on the same day. Oh my goodness, it's been quite a week.
Yeah.
It has been. Well, it's about 1:30, 1:40 in the morning there. So hey man, I wanted to thank
you
you
for squeezing us in.
Oh man, this was so fun. This is like exceeded all our expectations. And you're indispensable. This show that we do every Thursday night here, it would be much more difficult if you weren't doing what you were doing. So like, I just wanted to thank you again for like taking the time doing the work. And
it's always so fun to talk with people that get it, that ask the good questions and that understand the situation. I really appreciate it, you guys. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. We will definitely keep in contact. And when I finally hit up John Sweeney for an interview, I'm going to name drop you and Mark so I can get
Oh, I've had fun with John. I have had a lot of fun with that guy.
I would love to talk to John.
You'll enjoy it.
all right, so before we get out of here, just let everybody know again, like, who you are and where they can find your work and whatnot.
Okay, please come to TonyOrtega.org, the underground bunker, where we have a new story about Scientology every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, and an amazing commenting community made up of really knowledgeable former Scientologists and other people that they're just so smart, and we have wonderful conversations there. And you can follow me on Twitter at TonyOrtega94. And I've got a couple books out. I wrote a book about Paulette Cooper that I particularly enjoyed doing, The Unbreakable Miss Lovely, and that's available in all the usual places, and you can get a link from my website.
Well, Tony, thank you again. This has been fantastic, and thank you so much for taking the time. When I was like, hey, Media Wench, you should email Tony. This ought to be funny. He's not even going to respond, and then you did. We just thank you so much, because we're like trolls and polemicists, and we make fun here, and we're real glad to have over the last couple of weeks on this show, and like over the course of the show, and the other stuff that we're doing, that every once in a while we're able to have somebody on to give people the real deal and not just jokes and drinking and smoking pot. So we really appreciate you taking the time this evening.
All right, guys.
Next week we're gonna have Jamie DeWolf on, in case you wanna.
Oh, he's the best, man. I love that guy. He threw me the greatest party on my my book tour in 2015 for Miss Lovely.
Oh, did you go to Tourette's Without Regrets?
He put on a special circus act just for Paulette and me, and it was wild. It was so great. Actually my mom and my stepdad came too. It was so fun. Jamie's the best, man. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Well, we're starting to punch above our weight, and we want to thank you for letting us be able to say that. Tony, keep it up. And if you ever, I don't know what we can do for you, but if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask us.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good night.